So, I'm Victor Calise, like Game of Thrones. Who's Game of Thrones fans here? All right. I am the father of dragons. I have 2 teenage daughters at home. I am really a Calise. All right. So, I'm going to try to audio describe everything. I mean, the cool thing is that we got our great court person here today. Like, she's like awesome. Right? She's like, can really keep up with me. Except for the technology tonight, it's not as fast, which I heard. Anyway, slides. So we have a slide up here. It has a bunch of words. It says Accessible NYC and a cover of our Accessible NYC. And what is Accessible NYC? Accessible NYC is the state of persons with disabilities throughout New York City. There are 928,000 people with disabilities, and we have to have a way to be able to provide for them. And with what we do is we've been around since 1972. We've never held ourselves accountable, and we have now. And the 7 pillars of Accessible NYC are transportation, employment, financial empowerment, housing, health, education, and access. And we got some of our education people here today, right, DOE? Yep. There we go. All right, Jonathan, what do we got next? Transportation. One of the biggest problems in New York City, right? How many people have problems getting on the train today? There we go. How many people got on the train today?
I just don't go on the train.
Well, there's a lot of people like us, meaning people in wheelchairs, that can't get on that train. And it's a big problem. So we have to find a way to figure out how to make our transportation system accessible. So we have 2 slides on our that are up right now. The one at the top of it says subway accessibility. To the left is what Long Island City used to look like, right? If anyone's seen Long Island City, everything is just really tall buildings. On the right is what it's starting to look like. You see, and if you look in the background, you'll see all the high buildings that are being built on the right, but not when it originally started on the left. And you'll see right next to that elevated subway station happens to be a new building that's going up. The argument for accessibility in subways are this: it costs too much, right? It costs too much to build that infrastructure. Well, if you notice that slide on, well, actually, it's on your right, right? No, yeah, it's on your right. The slide on your right, you'll notice that that's built right next to a subway station. And we have to find a way to figure how to incentivize those developers to be able to add those elevators. And when we're talking about accessibility in the subways, we're not just talking about elevators, although that's one of the big things that you hear. It's really about all disabilities and thinking about vision and hearing and cognitive disabilities and how people with disabilities actually use that. So that's something that we're moving forward with the Fast Forward plan with Andy Byford and the MTA. So we're looking at different ways to do that. We've also worked to include the first ever chief of accessibility that reports to the Andy Byford, the new president, and he happens to be a person with a disability that's advocating for the rights, because it's really important for us to be able to do that. All right, accessible dispatch. There's a slide there with a phone that has the accessible dispatch app, and to the right is a person being pushed up into a wheelchair accessible vehicle. There are 13,000 cabs. By the year 2020, 50% of those cabs will be accessible for people with disabilities. It's a lot of work that our office did. It's a way to really streamline our transportation system. And we realized that it's a 5-borough system. And that's why we set up accessible dispatch. And accessible dispatch lets people with any disability throughout the 5 boroughs to be able to get a taxi. We're really proud to this because it's really about one New York City, and that's what the mayor says all the time. It's not just one borough, because accessible taxis only existed in Manhattan, but it doesn't anymore. We've do you have any? What's next? Okay, yeah, that's good. All right, so go back. So what we've done is we took those for-hire vehicles. I won't say the companies because it's a 4-letter word, but we've made sure that we've worked to make them accessible. So the city's taken a strong stance on that. We put a percentage of rides on there, but they've agreed to increase the number of vehicles, cut down wait times, have a central dispatch, and really provide data to the city of New York on accessible vehicles. We're really excited about that. We went a step further, the city council and the mayor's office, and we put a cap on the for-hire vehicles. So that means for 1 year, these for-hire vehicle companies cannot put any new vehicles on the street until we study the situation of what we need to do. What's interesting about that is that cap is only a cap on vehicles, but not on wheelchair accessible vehicles. They could put 100,000 to 1 million wheelchair accessible vehicles on the street today. But the question is, will they do it? That's the question. Now, there are over 100,000 of those for-hire vehicles on the street, and only 179 at this point in time are accessible. So there's the disparity, right? When we're talking about equality, we need it to be for everyone. And when we're talking about accessibility in those vehicles, it's about provision, making sure that there's captioning on all of that and being able to throw all the pay features and accessible vehicles, hearing loops inside these vehicles. So we're really talking about the totality of accessibility for those populations. Accessible pedestrian signals, that's what it says on the screen. To the left, you'll see the accessible pedestrian signal. And on the right is a person with a disability walking across the street with a white cape. Now, this accessible pedestrian signal is quite interesting. So you've heard them on the streets beeping, everyone, right? For those who can hear. They vibrate too. Now, the interesting thing is, I'm going to throw out a number, it costs about $30,000 to put a full intersection to get those done. Technology can serve that. Technology has a way to streamline this, and we've been working to kind of figure that out. We put some things together with the city of Barcelona to have a competition to see what would happen. We're working through some of that information right now. Wally, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So it was last year.
To the right,
To your left.
Your left, yes.
I got it. So last year, the DOT, Mayor's Office, CTO, and the MOPD, we were a part of this call for innovation, and we put it out. This sort of problem. It was like a tech challenge, and our problem is, how can we provide an affordable and accessible solution for blind folks to cross the street safely and efficiently? And with 23rd Street and 7th Avenue being a site for a pilot. So in November of 2017 is when we put out the call, and it took submissions, and then we kind of went through the submissions, and we had a final round, and we have not yet announced the winners, I believe, or I have not been told. So there is sort of a little bit of, it's taking a little longer than expected, but we the project will be happening hopefully the next year. I don't know, but there will be testing of this pilot. I think the pilot will be in that corner for about a year. And so we looked at different things, whether it's wearables or something in the infrastructure or an app, right? But we wanted to pick something. We had a panel of judges. I was actually one of them. And the criteria that we looked at were not just like affordability, but also, tech skills. You wanted something that you didn't have to have a smartphone to use, right? So it could have an app that you can use, but it also needs to be sort of low cost or something that you don't have to have high tech skills to use. So it could be like a fob that we provide folks, and then they just bring it with them. They have it in their pocket, and then it activates, whatever the call signal when they get close to it, something like that. So that's the kind of things that we are looking at for this call for innovations.
Thank you.
Image description, connected vehicle pilot. There is an overhead image of an intersection full of cars, buses, and traffic signals. Each one of these components, that's the cars, the buses, and the traffic signals, have yellow circles emitting from each one of them, and they're actually overlapping each other as if they're communicating.
So the Department of Transportation, I saw this today, and we've been working with the Department of Transportation on this as well. It's really thinking about, they have a pilot program that they're going to be launching, and it's going to be, they're going to have these connected vehicles that are going to start with taxis and buses. So it's vehicle to vehicle. Then there's vehicle to infrastructure, and then person to infrastructure and person to vehicle. Now, while I talked about wearables, right? Now, we've done some really interesting things in the streets of New York City, and in some ways it's been great, and that's basically bike lanes. And then we have those protected bike lanes. What we did is we really put people with visual disabilities at a disadvantage, because what we did is we took the bike lane and we pushed the cars out, and so when a person with a visual disability crosses the street, they actually listen to that car. Now, what we did is put a buffer in between.
Mm-hmm.
And now that buffer is a quiet bike that is there. So that person with a visual disability now has to go out further to the street and listen for the cars, not necessarily sure when they have to actually cross that street. And if they do cross that street, they don't hear that quiet bike coming by, right? You fix one problem, you add another. So this is really for us to kind of think about differently. How do we ensure that people with visual disabilities can cross that street in the most effective way? Well, 50% of car accidents happen with left turns and right turns. It's all in turns. So there are all problems with that. Now, this person to vehicle with some type of app or wearables that we've been talking about, right? We got wearables on our arms, right? We're thinking about wearables that you can actually wear and embed it into your clothes that can connect with the vehicles, that can connect with the person, that can connect with the smart wheelchair, that can connect with the bike to make sure that people with disabilities can cross the streets effectively. I think this is really something that's really interesting. Things that we've been talking about, the reality of vehicle to vehicle and vehicle to infrastructure is happening. And then the next phase that we're pushing really hard is person to vehicle, person to infrastructure. That's really important.
Employment.
So I often, good, you want to talk to the slide?
Okay. NYC at Work logo on there's a red apple with the text NYC at Work, and it's overlaid a cityscape with the Empire State Building.
If you're not seen, you're not heard. The unemployment rate for people with disabilities in New York City is, well, the national employment rate is about 4%. For people with disabilities from the working age of 18 to 65, the unemployment rate, is 79%. 79% of people with disabilities from the working age of 18 to 65 are jobless. 79%. It's pretty awful, right? If we're not seen in the workplace, we're not heard. And if we're not seen in the workplace, we can't provide for accessibility in data, in accessibility for apps, for the future of our technology, or accessibility in our buildings, or changing the perception of people with disabilities. It's what they can do that matters, not what they can't do. So we really need to employ people with disabilities. We move forward with this initiative called NYC at Work. It's a public-private partnership to employ people with disabilities throughout New York City. We've built a business development council for people that are interested in hiring people with disabilities. We've built the supply side to really say, you know what, we can find the talent, right? Because that's the thing. We can't find talented people with disabilities. That's not true. You haven't been looking. So we're vetting people. We have over 1,200 jobs that are available right now. Actually, 800 jobs, 1,200 people that are on our job board. So we're matching people with jobs, and we're getting them ready for the job, not getting them ready for the interview. Very different, right? People have gotten people ready for interviews, and they get the job, and they don't know what to do. And no one wants to hire a person that's not qualified to do the job. It's qualified individuals for real work with real pay and real advancement. And that's what NYC Work is about. Oh, yeah, okay.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
the bullet
could
points.
just read it.
You can read it,
The
Jonathan.
first public-private partnership for employment for New Yorkers with disabilities. And there are 2 bullets: building a sustainable pipeline of qualified talent to meet the needs of businesses in high-growth industry jobs across New York City. This is a business-led, business-driven initiative. So on the next slide, we have our Business Development Council. So on the screen right now is in the very center, the NYC at Work logo. This represents our initiative, the employment initiative that the commissioner just spoke of. And surrounding it are about 50 or so logos of businesses that partner with our office. I could read all of them, or I won't, and just say they're great logos. Ones that jump out, there's some city logos: NYC Information Telecommunication and Technology, Department of Social Services, MetLife, Citibank, Mount Sinai, Cultural Affairs, Wells Fargo, Uniqlo, Brooklyn Roasting Company, because who doesn't love coffee? MTA, New York City Transit, CUNY, and the list goes on and on and on.
Thank you, John. And business-led, business-driven, because generally in the past, it's been people with disabilities sitting in a room with their service providers complaining that they didn't have jobs. And what was missing from that is businesses. So businesses are at the table. Businesses are are the ones telling people with disabilities what they actually need, what they actually want. So it's really important for us to push this initiative in every sector as well.
And our next slide, more logos. This is our collection of schools and providers. You'll see every CUNY school is represented, and a few private schools as well, such as NYU, Columbia University, St. John's University, and Pace University, and so on.
So this is really cool. So what do we hear from the Business Development Council? What do you actually really need? And the big buzzword is cybersecurity. Right? Everyone needs cybersecurity. All right, that's great. So let's figure out what we can do to get people with disabilities in cybersecurity. So what we've done is we've built a what do we call it? We call it a training academy. Thank you, Jonathan. So this training academy is the first of its kind in the country. What we're doing is we're taking people with disabilities into this academy, and for 6 months we are training them to be trained in in cybersecurity. And the great part about it, it's powered by Cisco. It's a Cisco-powered course, 6 months of training. They're going to go through this training, and when they're done, they're going to come out with a certificate. And that certificate is going to say that they are qualified for cybersecurity. We're going to put them in a 3-month, 6-month internship and look to get them a job right after that. And some of the people in our Business Development Council have funded this. It's the first of its kind. We're looking at this. We have 16 people now. We're looking at the second cohort now to start it after. And we're really excited about what's happening because this is really a train-to-place model. And these train-to-place models have worked in other sectors, and we want to see how we can make sure we can do this for people with disabilities, and then include that to increase in other sectors as well.
The projector here, we have the Ability Cisco Academy powered by NYC at Work. This is the logo that we use. And underneath is a website URL, icdnyc.org/eligibility-it-academy. So if you're interested in learning more or potentially being in the cohort that the commissioner mentioned, you can visit icdnyc.org/eligibility-it-academy.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Financial empowerment slide.
Want to take it away?
Sure. Just the whole. Okay. So, Empowered NYC, free financial counseling for people with disabilities. EmpoweredCities.com. Before you take it away, or is that taking it away?
I'll jump in.
All right.
Thank you. So, one of the problems for people with disabilities, not all, but some, is that they rely on their Medicaid or Medicare. And what the problem happens to be is if they work, they lose their Medicaid and Medicare benefits. Big problem. And it's detrimental to a person with a disability. So they're faced with a choice at some point in their life. Do I go back to work and make real money? But if I lose my job, I'm going to lose my benefits. Or do I take my $700 a month from Social Security and live in poverty for the rest of my life and maintain my health insurance? It's a big issue. People don't realize that they can actually buy into their Medicaid, get 1619B with Social Security, and actually keep their Medicaid and work. So that's just one part. People don't realize that they can actually put money into an ABLE account and be able to save money, and it doesn't reflect. It doesn't go against their Medicaid, Medicare. But they don't know this, so that's why we really built something, a financial empowerment program powered by City with an I, and they've really come in and funded this initiative where we're getting counselors that are going to be able to talk people through financial empowerment, what it's like a bank, what it's like an ABLE Act, how you can keep 1619B. This is really powerful. And the problem is people with disabilities go to different places and everyone tells them something different. We really need to streamline that, and every counselor needs to be trained the same exact way. And we're going to meet people where they're at and be able to provide this service so we can get people back on their feet, tied with NYC at Work. It's all tied together. Housing. John, you want to describe the slide? And then I'll go
I
into
will
this.
describe the slide. Project Open House. There are two images next to the text Project Open House. One is a accessible ramp, and the other is an accessible bathroom. We're specifically a shower, which a bathtub has been removed and replaced with a shower. Underneath, the website URL reads nyc.gov/POH, as in Project Open House.
So Project Open House is a program that we run. If you meet income requirements, we can come into your house and actually make remediations and ensure that we can get all the accessibility, whatever that may be. Is it fire alarms because that we can get all the accessibility, whatever that may be? Is it fire alarms because you're a person who is deaf or hard of hearing and can't hear them when they go off, but you can see when they are on? Or it could be changing doorknobs, it can be expanding bathrooms and ramps, whatever that may be. Now, one thing that is important is that we really have to think about housing. And the mayor is committed to increasing and maintaining 300,000 units of affordable housing. And with that, 7% of that housing is set aside for people with disabilities. 7% of the apartments are set aside for people with disabilities. 5% for mobility, 2% for hearing and vision. Now, the problem is that you need to make $24,000 or more. And what did I say before? People with disabilities live in poverty. So the only way to fix this is jobs. Be able to have jobs and be financially empowered to understand how you can tap into that affordable housing. You can find out about that affordable housing through Housing Connect and sign up for it if you're a person with a disability. You get on the waiting list or the lottery list. They don't go as fast as the other apartments because A, people don't meet the income requirements, and B, people don't know about them. So we haven't gotten rid of all those apartments. So if you're a person with the disabilities that meets that income requirements, feel free to apply to it.
Health.
It's important to keep people healthy. Jonathan?
NYC Well. On the right, there's an image of a person holding a cell phone, just a close-up on their hands. And I think it's kind of pixelated, you can't read it, but it says, "Thank you for contacting NYC Well. What would you like to talk about today?" And on the left is there's a text. It says, "Text well to 65173, call 1-888-NYC Well, or chat online at nycwell.cityofnewyork.us."
We want to keep people healthy. We are working with the Greater New York Hospital Association to really talk about effective communication for people who are deaf and hard of hearing. So we're going to be holding some symposiums to that, because just imagine if you're deaf and you have an emergency and you go to the emergency room and they're not able to provide a sign language interpreter, what happens? It's just not right. We need to be able to inform our hospitals what effective communication is. Some of them have plans, some of them do well, some of them don't do well. But I'm pretty sure if you ask a person who is deaf and hard of hearing, you hear a whole different thing. So we're working on that. Want to hold another symposium about women's health care and how a woman with a disability has access to a GYN table that's accessible to them, or a mammogram machine, mammography machine that's accessible for them. So these are really important issues on health, and that's what we're doing.
Education, building a culture of accessibility. There are two images. On the left is a screenshot of the New York City 311 website. Let's make a payment. My neighborhood, get the NYC 311 app, and a whole bunch of other resources regarding different aspects of city resources or city life and services. On the right is the back of Wally Sabri's head as he is using his computer, listening to headphones.
Actually, he's got a better haircut there.
Wow.
Well, I said I was going to say it. It was a joke we were talking about before. So the culture of accessibility. We've done so much to really think about accessibility and digital accessibility, and Wale is the first chief accessibility officer. I know Wale always makes fun of me. It really is the face of accessibility in New York City. And through New York City government, talking about accessibility on so many different levels, from accessible websites, every link, every picture, every attachment. He's going to talk more about it, but Wale really is just one of the guys that are just leading the initiatives on a broad scale for accessibility. Of course, he has a partner, and that's Jonathan. Jonathan is another guy that is really big on accessibility. The people that are here with me tonight, without them, we're not able to push New York City to be accessible in digital accessibility. So, while you want to take over this, Jonathan, you guys want to chime in? I'm going to leave the next slide or two to you guys.
Okay, good. So, Wally, why don't you talk about what you do?
Okay, yeah. So, as the digital accessibility coordinator, my job is, well, so actually let's give the scope of what we're working with. Just websites, right? We have 50 agencies. We have about 300 websites. And we have about 50,000 pages associated with those 300 websites. So, it's not a lot of work for one person, right? So my job is to basically sort of help city agencies get up to speed with accessibility. I do that in many ways. I can test their website and work with them on improving the accessibility, right? And John helps out, so I'm more of an expert, obviously, in screen reader testing and keyboard access, right? Jonathan helps me with the visual stuff like color contrast, fonts, as well as the visual focus of the keyboard focus. So we do that. We also do. We wrote a report on the state of the website accessibility in NYC in 2017. It was mandated by Local Law 26, which was passed in 2016. And that law actually requires New York City to make a reasonable effort to make its websites accessible. And it also requires to write a report on the compliance of our websites. And the first one was published in 2017. Every 2 years from then, July 2017, there needs to be a new report submitted to City Council. So that's some of the work that we're doing, as well as we're getting out there and creating guides. We created lots of guides, like whether it's for accessible web design or accessible documents, accessible videos, accessible social media guide, and we circulate those internally in the city. Some of them are public, and we're hoping to finalize more and more of them. Actually, pretty much a lot of them are available online on public, just not on the MOPD website. I'll let you guys know why in a minute. Along with these guides, we do a lot of training. I heard somebody who was here from DOE, right? We did a training for you guys a long time ago. Somebody who's here from Vimeo, we did like 3 trainings for Vimeo. We mainly focus on city agencies, but we also, train community partners, anybody who's interested in accessibility, because, if we are helping make a more accessible experience for New Yorkers, then I feel like I'm doing my job. That's what we do. Part of that is, awareness raising. So next slide
is the 2018 Inclusion and Accessibility Conference. So there is an image which once again has Wally, but this time it's the front of him. He's looking pretty good, sporting a white cane, black pants, black mobility cane, and he is speaking to a crowd of people.
All right, so to celebrate Global Accessibility Awareness Day this year, we held a conference. We were working with a small city budget, so we kept it internal. So our conference was focused on digital accessibility and inclusion. So focused on topics of web design or electronic documents or video accessibility, accessibility for older adults, but also on topics of representation in promotional and outreach. So it wasn't just accessibility focused, but mostly it was accessibility focused. Because it was a small scale, or a small budget, we only invited city employees this time, and we had about 150 city employees show up. And that's a great number for us to train, right? And it's just more of the same trainings, the information that we've been pushing out, but a lot of new people, a lot of old people that are just having that same information reinforced. And as part of that conference, we actually had an awesome presenter, Thomas Logan, who was kind enough to bless us with his time and his knowledge and wisdom. And we also released a digital accessibility toolkit, which we can probably follow up with the link for the conference page. So we made actually a website for the conference, and we released a digital toolkit that includes accessible web design, documents, videos, social media, inclusive terminology. You can download those in accessible PDF formats on that website. We can follow up with Stacy or Thomas or whoever with the link to that website so that you guys can have it as well.
And I'm constantly pushing Jonathan and Wale to think outside the box, figure out ways that we can just affect city government to be able to do the right thing, because we have to by law.
One last so we would love to. This was the first accessibility conference. We would love to make it an annual thing, and we'd love to also open it up to the public. So we'd love to be able to partner up with anybody who's interested in the spring and putting on a digital accessibility conference for city employees and the public.
Speaking of that, I have this handy dandy clipboard.
Well, we got props and everything.
Some blank spaces that say name and email and phone number if you're interested. So this is one event that we had. As Wally mentioned, there's another on the way in terms of digital accessibility and trying to make it more public. But also, as you'll hear later on in the presentation, we're working on a hackathon right now. So pretty much, if you want to stay up to date on what we're working on in kind of an extension of this presentation and more, feel free to sign up. I'm just going to pass this along.
So it's really important for us to be able to add accessibility to everything the city has to offer. People with disabilities find an infrastructure right now that was built in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, and it's not accessible to us. And it's right now what's happening is there's an infrastructure that's being built, and it's the digital infrastructure, and it needs to be accessible for people with disabilities, so we aren't fighting two different tracks. And that's how come accessibility is important, and the city of New York has to lead that way, and that's all the work that Wale and his partner Jonathan are doing in crime right now to make things happen. So thank you, Jonathan Wale, for everything you guys do.
Access.
So one of the things that we realized is that people with disabilities need to be represented throughout every city agency to ensure accessibility is happening. So there was a local law that came out, and it said such that a disability service facilitator needs to be in agencies across the city. And what these disability service facilitators actually do, which we have 46 of them, they work in every city agency to ensure that they are meeting ADA codes and requirements, that they are providing programs and services, and that their infrastructure that's being built is accessible for people with disabilities. And we don't follow the ADA codes and standards. Well, we do, but what we do is we look to go over and beyond in every way that we can. We have design guidelines that come out that talk about going over and beyond ADA codes and standards. And that's the only way to affect government, is to be going over and beyond. Because the ADA codes and standards are minimal. We need to be able to go over and beyond that. And we look at ways in design, in lots of different ways. Is it expanding floor area? Is it increasing access to digital access? And is it making websites accessible? It's just every way that we can go over and beyond. We are pushing really, really hard to do that.
And I'd just like to note specifically that this image in the background here, so this is disability service facilitators. There's just a few examples of some of our disability service facilitators, NYC Parks, Human Rights, Fire Department, Police Department, HRA, but of course that list goes on and on and on. I think we have upwards of 50?
46, right?
46 working on it.
But over 58.
So all of their contact information is available at nyc.gov/DSF as a disability service facilitator. This will include the name of the DSF, their phone number, and their email. But in the background here, we have what seems to be a lecture going on. So this image is actually from our DSF quarterly meeting, in which we share, best practices, as the commissioner was saying, making sure we're on top of everything possible. Standing and presenting is Michael Edwards, and he is the director of the ADA certificate program, going over best practices for ADA compliance during a 2-day training for our disability service. So actually last year in Pittsburgh, we attended, and a handful of our DSFs, the National ADA Symposium, where we learned and we also taught. And Wally, you taught there, and this year we're hoping to go back again and continue sharing best practices and learning best practices. So we really try and be on the cusp as much as possible.
Because we need the most.
Accessible city.
No. We need the most educated people, and we need to be able to educate them and give them all the tools to succeed. Because if we don't give them the tools to succeed, we end up with an inaccessible city.
ASL Direct. So ASL Direct image is a person who is sitting at a desk signing to a webcam at a computer. The text is point-to-point communication in American Sign Language. Website, nyc.gov/ASL. And then video phone, 646-889-2626. So within the disability community, specifically within the deaf, hard of hearing community, there's a big barrier in terms of access to information. What a lot of people don't know is that for somebody who is deaf, specifically for who is deaf, there is difficulty with reading comprehension, because English is their second language. So therefore, they might have a significantly lower reading comprehension, or they might not be able to read at all. Now, this is important because when we think about how do we get access to information, we check our phones, we look up things on websites, we read, etc. So it can be difficult to have information, it can be difficult to get an answer. So what our office has done, created ASL Direct, which is a direct video conferencing service. So somebody who is deaf can take out their phone and video call our office directly and be connected with a member of our staff who is fluent in ASL who can directly provide services. Now you might be thinking, well, doesn't that already kind of exist with Relay? Kind of, but this is direct. You're not speaking to another person to speak to a person. We have actually taken the ASL, the fluency needed, and added more personality, added more personableness to the experience. But you can contact somebody directly. Monday through Friday, reasonable times, 9 to 5. So ASL Direct is currently available in our office, and we're looking to expand it into other agencies as well. So no Relay, no TTY, just direct communication. So you can go to nyc.gov/ASL and be connected, or you can call our ASL specialist. Her name is Noelle. Very nice. 646-889-2626.
That's a video phone number.
And that is a video phone number.
So we're always looking for ways to increase accessibility for everyone. So, Jonathan, explain slide.
LinkNYC.
So much better
I do this like 60 times a day with social media and everything else. So it's like bam. LinkNYC. 2 images. On the left is a LinkNYC kiosk. It's about 7 feet tall. Has a giant screen that says "Hello World." And on the right is a close-up on the keyboard and more of the physical tactile materials of it. It says 911 with a big red button with Braille underneath. Audio with an audio jack with Braille underneath. A numeric keypad. And there's also USB power, in which somebody is plugging into to charge their phone.
How many people have seen these on the streets? Majority of the hands have gone up. So the interesting thing about this is we knew this was coming, and what we did is we strategically placed ourselves to be the people that wrote the design guidelines for that. Talked about captioning on there, talked about high color contrast, talked about voiceover, heights for people with physical disabilities. So we were really smart in being able to write the design guidelines and put all of this in their request for proposal. So when it came to being built, it had accessibility built in it. Now, the interesting part about the accessibility about this, we told them what to do, and we gave them everything. And the day they opened it, they didn't turn it on.
Oh, no.
What do you think happened next? Yep, they got sued. Next slide. So we've done a lot. We've done a lot in there, but John, if you want to talk about this.
Yeah, text to 911. 2 images. On the left is a focus of a screen with a keypad up that says 911 as if they're dialing 911. And on the right is a person who is texting or using their phone.
So text to 911. We hopefully soon will be the next, the first big city in the United States to be able to add text to 911. Pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. We're really excited about this. Lots of different things that we have to do though to get there. We are taking an analog system and mixing it with the digital system, right? Because this is not next generation 911. This is pre-next generation 911. So being able to tie that together, get a culture of organizations to be able to work together, to be able to understand this, is something that we've been committed to do. This is the way that we're moving forward. The city of New York gets it, understands that it's not only for people who are deaf, but it's people who have speech disabilities. It's people in domestic violence that will be using this. Text to 911 will be a lifesaver. And New York City will be one of the first biggest cities in the United States to be able to push this forward. We can open some questions a little bit. I'm running out of time, so I kind of want to move here. Inclusive innovation for smarter cities. Jonathan, you want to talk about this? This is tomorrow.
This is tomorrow. Okay, it is tomorrow. So this is just an example of some of the work that we are doing. Inclusive innovation for smarter cities. Smart city gets thrown around a lot, so we want to take it up to smarter cities. So as we're discussing technology, as we're discussing ways that we can make innovative solutions for people and kind of, create an atmosphere in which we can use technology to do everything that we dreamed about, whether it be access to information or flying cars or what have you. There's, as the commissioner mentioned before, a lot of times people don't care about disability. People don't think about disability. So as we're planning for the future, we need to make sure that disability is included. And the best way to do that is to make sure that there is inclusion within these think tanks, within these tech locations, within all of these. So we hope tomorrow at Grand Central Tech to detail both the social benefits and business opportunities for New York, resulting in inclusive innovation. So innovation for everybody, innovation for people who use wheelchairs, people who are deaf or hard of hearing, people who are blind, low vision, people who are little people like myself. Doing that, we want to catalog accessibility standards, universal design principles, and usability concepts that every urban incubator and accelerator should be aware of. And we want to define the most significant factors that can ensure inclusion is a part of the innovative process within New York City.
Hey, John.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So in plain language, basically we're just holding a focus group with experts tomorrow. We're collaborating with G3ICT and World Enabled. And we have folks coming from government sector. We have folks coming from the private sector, people with disabilities, all sorts of experts. And we're basically having this roundtable that's basically a focus group of some sort. And what we're hoping to get out of that is basically like to get a bunch of information and then release a toolkit for the world on how to create accessible smart cities.
Because it really, again, we got to build that infrastructure to include people with disabilities.
Okay. And then social hackathon.
Oh, yeah.
So on the right is an image of Google, and on the left is a few bullet points. So we are hoping, we are in the midst of planning a social hackathon. We want to bring together a community of people such as yourselves who are interested in using technology, to create a more inclusive environment. Try not to be too buzzwordy. I realize I went off pretty intently, which is why you're like, hey. So we want to identify multiple problems being faced within the disability community. And then in an 8-hour hackathon, split into diverse groups of people from different backgrounds, different disabilities, different perspectives, and come up with technological solutions to these issues that people with disabilities are facing. The winning team of the day will get to pitch their idea to Google developers. This is still in development. If you'd like to be involved, sign that sheet that's going around. So as we, finalize details and more information comes out, you'll be in the know. That's it. All right. That's it. All right.
So, Jonathan, you want to read this last
Yeah,
slide?
sure. New York City Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities logo, just a list of contact information. Voice phone, 212-788-2856. Video phone for ASL, 646-889-2626. Our website is nyc.gov/disability. And our social media is @NYC Disabilities.
So, this is all the small things that we're doing to make sure people are successful in the world. Have to. It's imperative. We can't do this in a bubble. That's why we're here talking to you. We need all your help, and all of you are committed to accessibility. And I'll tell you, just as I said that, I got chills because I'm excited to see that we're not alone in this movement. So thank you, each and every one of you. I have a few minutes to answer some questions. I do have another event to get to, unfortunately, so I'll spend as much time as I could. So if there's any questions, please, let's go. Let's make it quick. Questions? You have a question first?
I did have a question. It was just about, I just learned a ton that I had not even thought about before. And with the 911, when people, it would seem to me it's not just the technology, it's also about hiring people who are more sensitive.
Yeah, it's a bunch of different things.
Right.
So, understanding what text to 911 is, it's a very complicated system to get to. I'm not going to go into the details, but there's a big, reliable infrastructure in analog, right? That we have to make sure is reliable and digital, right? That's number one. And then when it gets to the dispatcher, that text has to be deciphered, right? So on a call, you can get that, right? But in a text, you might not be able to get that because remember, Jonathan talked about some people English is their second language, right? People who are deaf, their reading level isn't so high, so that might come through differently. So we've come up with scenarios of what other things might look like, so we can really prep the dispatchers and all that. So there's a lot of training mechanisms. We hired people who are deaf to be able to push this stuff through, to really get that consultant part of it in there and really talk about what this would look like. So there's a lot of work that goes into it. It's not like just, hey, text 911, it's there. It's not. We have to do a lot of preparation because this is life safety. And we got to get it right.
I'm doing a research project on actual LinkNYC and accessibility. Do you think LinkNYC can be rethought as something more of a platform, a resource for people with disability, and incorporate, as Thomas talked about, like this accessible dispatch or like video phone?
Great, thank you for saying that because I did forget to talk about that. Yes, so what I envision Link to look like, right? We were talking about that pilot program that the Department of Transportation is doing right now, right? I really think of Link as that convener, the link that's going to be able to talk. Remember, we talked about vehicle to infrastructure and people to infrastructure. That's where I really think Link plays that way, that communicator, that buzz thing that's going to help people cross that street, that's going to bounce off there to the wearable, that's going to tell if there's safety. Absolutely. We are looking to add video relay for people who are deaf now. We're working to make sure that text 911 can exist on there, and we're hoping to get American Sign Language Direct on there as well.
I can also speak to some of the work we've done to
Yeah.
make it accessible too. So, last we heard, right, they just didn't turn on the accessibility features, right, and then they got sued. So 3 weeks later, they turned on the accessibility features. And so it's an Android-based device. So we got TalkBack, the screen reader. We worked with them as well as NFB and other advocacy groups. And we tested, we told them what was working, what wasn't. And we also gave them suggestions. So if you don't like using a touchscreen, you can actually use the keypad to navigate. You can just use, like 6 to go forward and 4 to go backwards and 5 to, access. So and that's something they customize for us, right? Then there is the 911 button. And when you press it, it used to just have a visual message on the screen. They recorded an audio for that says, press 911 one more time, press the button one more time to call 911, and also saying, if this is not an emergency, you could get arrested. So it also gives you instructions on how to cancel in case you pressed it by accident. So there's also the Vonage app that you can use to make calls, and we just told them it needs to be accessible, and they worked with Vonage actually to make that app accessible to TalkBack.
I mean, reality is whatever Link does here, right? And all the free consultation we gave them is going to make their product that much more desirable somewhere else. But we're leading the way, and we don't care about that because it's just about accessibility. Yes. Go ahead,
You
Jules.
spoke about LinkNYC features that demonstrates while working.
Yep.
Can you give direct contact information for
Yep.
how to access those?
Jules, we'll work with you. Jonathan will get your contact information. We'll have someone get directly to you.
Okay.
Not a problem. Yes, Pete.
When you talk about accessibility to these big organizations, you talk about how making something free to go on the web actually makes it easier for them to manage their Google results and things like that, how it would benefit them beyond accessibility. Because I feel like when I talk to people about accessibility, I work in big entities. So when I talk to people about accessibility, I don't say oh, you have to make it accessible. I try to talk to them around how it'll benefit them more than it'll benefit us. Because they could honestly, I feel like most people aren't getting it yet. So you want to see how you want to sell it to them how they can win. It's not you have to make it accessible. You want to show them how they can win.
Right. And
Right.
so when I work with city agencies, let's say, I try to use the carrot approach first. So I might be like, hey, I noticed I noticed that your website could be better for accessibility. Let me help you do that while, complying with the law and reaching a broader audience, right? Reaching more New Yorkers. That doesn't work. I maybe try a few more approaches before I say, well, you could get sued. You're breaking the law, right? But, generally speaking, yeah, we
What's the last
definitely, that's the last one.
No, you come to me.
Yes. And I have before. And so we try to use the positive approach first. I will throw in things like that. Yeah, as you make your website more accessible, adding more alt text to images and things like that, it yields better Google search results. And it just makes a better website in general. It's a better design, more people can use it. We're a city of immigrants, so it's not just people with disabilities as well.
I mean, and then one of the things we have to be really cognizant of is the data deficit for people with disabilities, right? I remember I mentioned there's 928,000 people with disabilities. We know that number is bigger, right? We know that number is 1.5 million, maybe close to 2 million, but people are scared to self-disclose. And when we do that, it's harder to show what the market share is, right? It's harder to build that information out for people. I mean, we're large large numbers of people with disabilities. So it's detrimental to us when we don't have appropriate data because it really doesn't reflect of who we are and what we use and how we use it and how much capital we can bring to an organization. So, I mean, it really is upon us, people with disabilities, to really talk about and disclose their disabilities and be loud and proud about them and request and demand and insist that it's there, because when we don't, it's detrimental to us because nothing gets built, right? There's that old say, and, you know, the idea is nothing without us, period. Period. I have to go. I'm going to leave the very capable Jonathan and Wale to answer. I'm going to leave the very capable Jonathan and Wale to answer the rest of your questions if you do have them. They can answer. Honestly, I may be the commissioner, but without them and my office, I don't exist. And my staff is really part of who really drives this forward within New York City. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for what you do. It's really important that we have you because technically you're an extension of our of NLPD. Have a good night. Thank you.
Guys, I think we will, we're gonna just wrap up and have the rest of our conversation just be kind of amongst each other's, because we've had excellent captioning blocks here tonight. First, like to say thank you so much to everybody else. You watch our captions, it's so accurate, so amazing, so it's great tonight. Thank you, Jonathan and Wale, also for being here. This was a master class in explaining the images and actually giving very good audio descriptions. We will share this as an illustration for other presenters to come here to learn from that. This was our best described presentation ever. We will have about 30 minutes probably to socialize here afterwards. But just want to say we already have our December and January meetups planned, which is a milestone for us. To the Meetup website, you can find our December and January events, and we'll also be putting out the newsletter again. And if you ever have events or things you want to let the community know about, if you message those onto the board, we can put those into the newsletter as well and help distribute that out more broadly. But thank you for such great attendance and look forward to conversations.
Wait, Wally, did you want to talk about that job opening?
So we recently connected with a company called Seamless Docs, and they're really jazzed about accessibility. They currently have a job posting for an internship, but also there will an internship for they're calling it ADA coordinator, but it's basically a digital accessibility coordinator. And there will be also a full-time job posted soon. So if anybody's interested looking for work right now, the internship is available. Feel free to form me a resume and I will pass it on to them.
And lastly, thanks again to Thoughtbot for being our host here tonight. And also thank you to Level Access for giving us funding to be able to have captions and sign language interpretation at other events. Thank you guys.